You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is a program called
The Wonderful World of Wardini Books.
And as always, it's my pleasure to have in the studio the wonderful Lou from Wardini Books in Havelock North. How you going, Lou?
Really well, yeah.
Flat out like a lizard drinking again?
Yeah, kind of, but it's a different kind of busy now.
Sort of just regular busy.
Regular busy, so it's been a lot more chilled for me.
Good on you. And of course, you do have a 7-day-a-week operation in both stores.
We do, yeah.
And you have a presence online as well?
Very much so.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Like us.
What was this famous line?
I've no idea.
Oh, you'd know. I can't remember.
I don't know.
I was trying to be clever there.
I was going to say omnipresent like God, but that's a little bit blasphemous.
That might be a slight bit of a stretch there.
Yes, just a bit. Just a bit.
Okay, we've got 3 more fabulous books, and you have read each one of these books this week. And if you just lift those 3 books up, I mean, there must be over 1,000 pages there that you've read in a whole week.
There are a lot of words, aren't there? One of them's... So how many pages is Shuggiee? Well, 430 something.
Yeah.
And then Tell Me Lies is a little bit shorter. But yeah, that's what happens when you get a good one, though.
That's right, you get a good one, yeah. And are they books that you just can't put down?
Yeah. All 3, actually. All 3 very captivating.
I was going to say, do you find that's very few and far between a book that you can't put down? But here we're going to talk about 3 of them.
Yeah, sometimes if I find my attention wanders, then I'll just leave it. Because I've got many alternatives, as you can imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the first book we're going to talk about is Shuggiee Bain.
Shuggiee Bain by Douglas Stewart. This one won the Booker Prize 2020, so that's one of the major international prizes. And this one is set in 1980s Glasgow. So the cultural references are more to do with politics than music and art. So it's Margaret Thatcher's era. And Glasgow has become quite depressed.
And it looks like a poor estate on the front.
Yeah, it's the tenements.
Yeah.
So Shuggiee is a little boy for most of the book. We meet him as a teenager at the beginning and at the end, but it's mostly the story of how he lived in first a high-rise tenement with his mother, who is an alcoholic. She's not just a big drinker. She gets up in the morning and the first thing she does is scramble around for the dregs of the can from the night before. She's that kind of alcoholic. Quite often covered in her own vomit. And it's not long before Shuggiee is the one that's looking after her as a little boy, from the age of 5, making sure that her head is turned the right way when she falls unconscious so she doesn't choke, things like that. So it really is about his relationship with his mother, and they love each other desperately. They're very close. There are 2 older children, but the girl eventually marries really young, like she's 17, and buggers off to South Africa, I think she goes. And then the middle boy, Leek, who is just the most wonderful, empathetic character, he's sort of forced out by his mother's vitriol when she's drunk. So he ends up going, and he's got many talents, and you can only hope that those talents are realised. And then there's little Shuggiee, who's named after his father, Big Shug, who's a taxi driver around Glasgow, and is really one of those toxic men who... Agnes is a beautiful woman. I don't know how she maintains that beauty through her alcoholism, but she's got an allure, and she's different from the other women in their coolers and their slippers in the tenements. And so he just sets out to break her, really. And the last thing that he does, Big Shug, is, right, we're going to move out. We're going to move out of the tenements. You'll have your own front door. This is the big thing. You'll have your own front door. And it's a mining town, but the mine's closed. And when they get there, he just leaves her and the kids and he buggers off.
Wow.
And so that's his final act. I just wanted to see if you'd come. And then he leaves her. So Agnes then just descends into... Despair, and you can imagine what it's like. So there are moments of hope, and there are very much so moments of love, but it is how this kid... And Shuggiee is also... He's always known he's, in inverted commas, not right, because kids go always not right, and the adults say he's not right, because he's effeminate. And it will turn out that he's gay. But... so he's got a lot of challenges. He's got no friends to speak of, and he's looking after his mother, and eventually there is a friend that comes along who will be his salvation, and she's in a pretty much similar situation. So the desperate poverty is the cause of these ills. That's what we learn through the book.
So it sounds like a book full of despair, but it does have a shining light in there.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I think the author, Douglas Stewart, it's quite autobiographical, he will admit, but it's a work of fiction, so you've got to separate to some extent. But he does talk about his experiences with his alcoholic mother, and he lost her when he was quite a young man. She died.
I was going to say to you, how does someone write about how does someone write a book like that? It has to be from some sort of personal experience, and you just answered the question before I got to
be
ask
authentic.
Yes.
In that case, when you're living in a slum and then you're living somewhere that isolates you completely, you would have had those feelings, I think, to be able to write about them, or interviewed someone intensely to get their perspective. So that won the Booker Prize. So the Booker judges saw a lot of value in that.
And how would you rate that out of 10?
For what it is, it's up there, Ken. But it is grim.
Who's going to read it?
People who read the Booker Prize winners.
Yes.
People who want to keep up with what literature is doing. And the point, I think, of the Booker is they try to find a point of difference. They try to find something that affects another human being, because that's what books do.
Yeah,
and this one certainly does.
Okay, from one book that covers a range of despairs to the next one, which is Sorrow and Bliss.
Yeah, and it really is full of sorrow and bliss. And this is by Meg Mason. I believe she's an Australian author. And in this one, Martha is our main character. And Martha grows up in quite a bohemian household with her sister, who's a little bit younger, Ingrid. But lots of people think, they must be twins, because they're quite close in age. So they're very close, the sisters. And father is a poet. He's had one poem published, and then he's not published anything else. And mum is a sculptor of minor importance. So they're arty people, and mum's a big drinker. We've got that. And it's the auntie, it's mum's sister, who's the one that really does the family Christmas. And she married someone who was quite rich, so she's the one that really bails them out. And so they've got this kind of life going on, but it's all quite lovely until Martha is 17, and there's a scene in which she feels a bomb goes off in her head. And after that, she has physical symptoms, but then she has terrible depressions, terrible dark times, and then she'll be okay. And then it's dark again, and her dad takes her to the doctors, and there are diagnoses bandied around and medication bandied around, but she's never quite on top of it, and she just figures that this is her life, this is how it's going to be. She has a marriage, and then eventually she has a second marriage to a man who was a childhood friend, and they grew up together, and eventually realised that the love was there. And it really is about how the hell he copes with Martha, who can be viscerally funny and wonderful, and then can just live under a table for a week and can't move, and throws things, and is unstable. But the thing about this novel, Ken, is though it sounds like there's a lot of sorrow in it, the bliss parts are because they're clever, they're smart, the dialogue is really funny because of the way that they interact with one another. So the sister's great. She gets married and just churns out babies, and Martha decides that she's not going to have children because what if they're like her? Yeah. So there's that theme there as well of motherhood and what that means, and their relationship with their own mother is a bit, oh God, she's at it again, and it's dad really that looks after the babies, that looks after the girls. So there's it's just a wonderful world to be in. The dialogue again, it's funny, it's smart, it's just, I just loved it. I read that really quickly.
I'm a happy ending guy. Has it got a happy ending?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that, so that someone that goes, oh God, not another book about depression, can get there and think, there's all sorts going on in there. But she does Martha has a big revelation, and it changes the way that she thinks about her life completely. So she's got to reassess everything and start again at one point in the book. So that's hopeful.
And I suppose the thing about both those books that you've reviewed so far is that they're both about real life in a way, aren't they? Although they're fiction, we know lots of people who live just like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I've had a couple of conversations recently in which someone said, I want a book for this person, but they're really straight up and down, they don't have sort of emotional issues. So how are you ever going to understand emotional issues if you don't read about them? So that's what we get other people's experiences through books, don't we? We walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
Tell me lies.
Okay. This is a great book, actually. It's J.P. Pomade, who's a New Zealander again, and he lives in Australia now. And this is his third novel, and he's had a lot of success with his... They're kind of psychological thrillers, really. And in this one, we have Margot Scott, and she's a psychologist. And we can tell that something has happened early in her career where she's obviously crossed a boundary. And something's happened with one of her patients. But she's come back from that. She's married, she's got 2 children. And she has a series of clients, a lot. She describes there's the alcoholics, there's the depressed people, there's the bored housewives. And then there are the more interesting ones who might... display certain psychopathies and things like that. So, and it does go into quite a bit of an explanation about psychology and mental illness and certain conditions. It's quite fascinating from that point of view. But one night they're at home. She's got a teenage daughter and son. The son's a gamer, and he's got some kind of quite successful streaming platform in which people follow him. You know, I don't really understand all that, but you know, we hear about these things. And someone chucks a Molotov cocktail through their window, and the house goes up in flames. And she finds a piece of paper with a disturbing image on it, and she starts to make connections about who's done it. We've obviously been targeted, you know. Who was it? Are they targeting me as the psychologist? Are they targeting the boy who's online all the time? What's going on? So then we do have this little pieces of clues that we put together as we read the book. And it's quite a short book compared to the other two. This is only 200 and something pages, so it's probably nearly, it's 257, not even that, 230 something pages. So it's a real quick, fast-paced read, so you can sit there in a night or two and devour that one. So, who's after Martha and why?
Yeah, and do we find out in the end?
Yeah.
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 Is it a surprise?
There are surprises in there. Yeah, there are certain things. I like it when you are given clues that you can put together, but sometimes you just can't be given that clue. It's sometimes because it's a surprise to the character, and there are a few of those as well, and you just go, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Do you ever get the temptation, as I do, I cheat, to think, oh, I wonder, you think who it might be, and you go ahead a few pages?
No! That's terrible. That's such a spoily thing to do. Wouldn't it ruin it? Doesn't it ruin it for you?
Well, it does, but sometimes I think, oh, I hope it works out, you know what I mean?
Oh, and you get a bit anxious about it.
Yeah, you think, oh, I hope that all works out. Like that first book, I'd like to have a look at the end, see if they came out all right. I think,
is Shuggiee all right?
That's right.
Shuggie's all right, Ken. It's okay.
All right, that's great. So if we want any of these fabulous books, where do we get them?
Oh, Wardini Books would be ideal for all your literary purchases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As always, my pleasure, Lou. You look after yourself. Talk to the same time, same place next time.
Cool. Thanks, Ken.